for tuning in to yet another episode in which I talk about issues related to public transport. This is me from the Marin office. I think this was also where I was posting the last video. And we're going to jump right into a topic that I have been spending a lot of time on in the last however long, and by however long I mean about a year, which is modernizing New York commuter rail. So this is a report that we started at ETA, the Effective Transit Alliance, I think late 22. It started out as an FAQ about through running, and it was a meaty 5,000, 6,000 word, 7,000, 8,000 word report, 10,000, 13,000, 16,000, 19. I think the Google Docs version is exactly 20,000, and without footnotes. And so the document kind of changed over time as we were doing it. It was supposed to be an FAQ about running, but over time, first of all, it became not just an FAQ, and it was not just about contrasting good running with current plans. It was just how to do it. A lot of it became more technical, then less technical, then more technical, and it became also about things that are not just running, which is why, we talk about running, but not just about running. A lot of what we talk about is things that can be implemented without any concern for running, which is this. It's just frequency on commuter rail, and some of it is a US-wide problem. Canada-wide problem as well. Toronto has the exact same problem. And it's not exactly scope creep. The scope didn't change very much. In some cases, the scope was decreased. We had a change in the definition of the project from so this is maybe showing you what it looks like under the hood a little bit, but so we bold the big asks, right? So we talk about high old age frequency. We talk about electrification of the entire New York commuter rail system. Some parts are more important to electrify than others, but just do all of it. High platforms everywhere where they are missing. Thankfully, there isn't that much that is missing. The LIRR is entirely high platform and has been since, I think, the 70s. Metro North, with a very small handful of exceptions, same. New Jersey Transit is the one that needs the big fixes on this. Some junction reconstruction. These are a lot of projects that are part of the Gateway program, the 50 billion Gateway program, which is largely unfunded, but they're not 50. It's I think all of these combined might be. I think the ones that are on the official agenda are about $1 billion, and the ones that aren't but should be maybe another 600 million. So there's not a lot of money. It's just targeted investments to make sure that trains can flow smoothly and that trains on one line will not delay the others, that you can plan inbound and outbound trains without conflicts at junctions, without single track conflicts. Things are very wonky but are really important. And we talk about running. You can't not talk about running. It's important, but it's one of several things. And also we talk about how the expansion of Penn Station. So this is the footprint of Penn Station, roughly. It's between 31st and 33rd. There are plans for expanding it south to 30th Street, which are called Penn Station South or Penn Expansion. Current cost is projected to be $17 billion, and that project has no merit whatsoever. So as we say, it should be canceled. It's one of our big asks because it's $17 billion. I also don't think Penn Expansion will happen. And I don't want to be the sort of mouse who rides on top of an elephant and says, "Look how much dust we're kicking out, how much dust we're kicking off." So it's not happening as far as I can tell, just because the budget is horrific, so I will tell you the benefits of this are zero. We have a short section of that. It's 2 pages on a 47-page, or it's a 48 maybe page document. 47-page document. And this is 2 pages of that because it's a thing, but it's not the most important. A year ago, it looked like it might get funding, which would be terrible because there's a fixed amount of money in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Uh, the Hudson Tunnel projects. So I don't know if there's a good map of everything. So the Hudson Tunnel project is this tunnel. It continues under the Hudson. There are currently only 2 tracks between New Jersey and Manhattan, 2 mainline tracks. There are also 2 pairs of tracks that are only for path trains, so it's essentially like the subway. These 2 mainline tracks for New Jersey Transit and Amtrak are very busy. The trains, I don't know how busy they are now, but before Corona, they were at capacity. Uh, they were running 24 trains per hour inbound peak, which is roughly the limit of what such tunnel can handle. The trains were also very full. So the commuter trains in New York from the other direction, so Grand Central, so Metro North and the LIRR. So LIR also, so Metro North and the LIR. They're said to be crowded, but they're not really crowded. They define crowded as you need to sit in the middle seat because these trains have 5 abreast seating, 2 on one side of the car or 3 on the other, and nobody likes the middle seat. So they're considered to be at capacity at 80% seated, which is insane. On the subway, off peak, 125% of seated capacity is considered capacity, and sometimes it's exceeded. Rush hour, it's much more crowded than that. New Jersey Transit has a lot of standees, or maybe not now. I'm not actually sure, but certainly on the eve of Corona, had a lot of rush hour standees. So this is a good project. I'm glad it's funded. It should not be 16 billion. It should be about 2, given the length of the tunnel. But honestly, 16 might still be justifiable based on the benefits, especially if all the modernization projects that we propose uh, happens. And yeah, thank you, Prague. Yeah, we're about to also debut another document, which I'm not going to show on stream because it's not out yet. It will be out shortly about New Jersey specific issues. So let me find a safe link. So it is this one. It's a part 2 of this. So there's a turnpike expansion plan, so just widening the freeway in Jersey, which is billed as a bunch of different things, none of which is actually solved by widening that particular highway. Like for example, it's supposed to be about freight, but most of the highway traffic is cars, not trucks. Um, it's it is widening. One can actually show this on Google Maps or something, or Google Earth. So it's widening the turnpike, the connections to the Holland Tunnel, but not the Holland Tunnel itself. So it's not actually going to solve. So if you believe that more traffic is good, more cars are good for access to jobs that you drive to, that still doesn't solve that problem. It's just highway widening, I think, for its own sake, and we're proposing how not to do it and how to instead invest in public transportation, invest in some bike lanes in Hudson County. So the Jersey doc that Brock is talking about is essentially part 2 that talks more specifically about operations, like how to actually improve path operations, how to improve the connectivity between commuter trains and bikes, or things like bike parking, for which I literally just got pics of such that I'm not going to show because I don't check email and stream from New Brunswick. And so things like that. And this is about to be out shortly as well. Yeah, exactly. It's on operational nature. So things like how to do better bike parking to improve accessibility to commuter rail bay modes that are not the car, because one of the problems of New Jersey Transit, we don't go into it in either docs that much, but commuter rail in the United States, so we talk about how commuter rail in the United States is said to be entirely or almost entirely about peak commuters. So people who live in the suburbs are middle class or at least close to what I, as a European, would call middle class, uh, and work 9 to 5. So it's a very peak oriented, very suburb to city center kind of system. We didn't talk that much. We talked a little bit in the urban context, but one of the issues of commuter rail in the United States is also for people who own cars and drive everywhere except to city center jobs uh, in the 9 to 5 period. And this means that, for example, the stations are often park and rides, um, and they're built outside city centers. So in Boston, we actually went ahead and proposed moving some stations in especially egregious locations. Now, let's not have the New York, New Haven crayon on this. This is gonna be covered at a future stream. Um, so for example, the busiest commuter rail station in the New York region outside the city is Ronkonkoma. This is Ronkonkoma. This is the land use near Ronkonkoma. So yes, there's this airport, but it's not serving the airport. The airport facilities are literally on the other side of the runways. This is just a giant parking lot, and this is not really transit-oriented land use. It's a parking lot for people from all over Eastern Long Island to go here. This is the end of electrification on the main line. The other lines have electrification until much farther west. So the main line is electrified up until this point. The Babylon branch only up to Babylon here, and the Port Jefferson branch only up to Huntington. So here, in fact, this is one of the highest ridership diesel lines in the system. There are 3 very busy diesel lines. This is one of them, so it's an early priority to electrify all the way. The others are New Jersey Transit on the Raritan Valley line and Metro North on the Upper Hudson line. So this is a giant parking lot, and even stations in town centers don't really interface with a town center. So here, this is Hicksville. This is a town center that could be. This is the second busiest on the LIRR. I forget what its ranking is region-wide. It might be number 3 or 4. I think it goes Ronkonkoma, then White Plains, maybe then Hicksville, or maybe Stamford is ahead. I'm not sure. So you can see it again. It's a lot of parking garages, lots of parking lots, and yeah, there are things there. There's this giant shopping mall, but it's not at the station, and it's not really walkable to the station. So we don't talk about it that much in the report. We talk about things like urban bus commuter rail connections. In the Jersey report, we do talk about bike parking. Very important in places that have strong mainline rail and also strong bike networks, to wit, the Netherlands and Copenhagen. They use a system of bike parking rather than making people bring the bike on a crowded train. And so commuter rail, unfortunately, it's too much of a shuttle, essentially a rush hour shuttle, on a rail, on a shuttle on rails between a parking lot and city center, and this is what needs to change. Ooh, you're raising the next generation Alpha Rail fans. There are the millennials. There are like us. There's Zoomer Rail fans. On Twitter, there's Uday Schultz, for example, and then who we reference a lot for his very deep insights on the subway. Or Shaul Picker, same thing, and then Gen Alpha. Yeah, and so and so it's all about how to make commuter rail work with other public transit and not against it. And this means so again, we don't talk about the land use issues very much because a lot of the operational issues don't really depend on the land use. You can keep all the land use as is and just run the trains more frequently, run them more regularly, invest in reliability enough that you don't need to pad the timetable 30%, repeat, 30%, to make the trains look kind of on time, which is what the LIR does. If the timetables were padded normally and not 30%, so 7% is normal in Switzerland, a local train from Ronkonkoma to Penn Station, making all of the mainline stops, so all of these stops, and then maybe just running express from Floral Park or something, so only skipping a handful of stops here and here, would be about as fast as trains today that go non-stop from Ronkonkoma to Penn Station. And that's just insane how much you can speed up the trains just through better operations. And we talk about this. Not to mention electrification and high platforms. Again, the LIR is entirely high platforms. This section is electrified. Again, this Huntington to Port Jeff is what's not. So again, we talk about the need to do all of this. We talk about why Penn Station is stupid. Not Penn Station is stupid. Penn Station expansion is stupid. There are 21 tracks at Penn Station. That's a lot. The tracks are the platforms are narrow, but 21 tracks is a lot. So 2 tracks. This is the North River tunnels. Hudson Tunnel project is roughly like this to add 2 more tracks. And then Penn Reconstruction is to do a lot of in-place rebuilding of Penn Station, which is mostly good, but $7 billion is a lot of money for that. I'm skeptical, but I'm always skeptical about costs in the United States. They are trying to experiment with even worse project delivery methods than they have used so far. Things like progressive design build, which means one contractor does both the design and the construction. It's what most of the world calls design build. In New York, it's called progressive design build and is currently illegal in New York for anti-corruption reasons. So people like, I think it's one of the advisors to Eric Adams is proposing to change state law to permit and even mandate that. What is called design build in New York is not really design build. It's what we call disbidine build, and it's actually not bad, where you still do 2 contracts, one for part of the design, like 60%, and one for the rest of the design and the construction. So they're trying to experiment with even more privatization of the state, even worse project delivery. It's a bunch of agencies that can't agree on anything except to privatize things, to consultants who will then supervise other consultants, which works exactly as poorly as they would expect, is why I'm kind of skeptical of Penn Reconstruction. Like, it's a good project, it's just not being run well. Penn Expansion, so Penn Reconstruction is 7, they want 80% of that from the feds, so 80% of 7 is what, 5, why can I not math on stream, 5.6. They want that out of a bucket of 30. And then Penn Expansion, I haven't seen any memorandum that says how much they want, but if they want 80%, that's going to be 80% of 17 is going to be almost if that plus Penn Reconstruction is going to be 2/3 of the entire program, which is going to do close to nothing, because Penn Reconstruction is, again, it's good, but it's for a high-speed rail program close to nothing, and Penn Expansion is nothing. And I mention all of this because as I understand it, the likelihood of Penn Reconstruction getting the entire 7 that he's asking for, or 80% of it, the 80% that he's asking for, is not that high. That's my vague, and I emphasize vague understanding. I have inside information which is slightly better than reading tea leaves, but only slightly. So don't actually take my word for this. Penn Expansion, people who are materially better at reading tea leaves are skeptical that it's going to happen on this round of funding. Like, it keeps getting planned and it wastes a lot of planner time, but they want too much money. And even if you accept all of their claims about the need for that project, which are all garbage, and we go over this a little bit in the report, it's not likely to happen, I don't think, which is why the report was proportionally much more about why not to do Penn Expansion, and then we needed to claw that back to maintain some kind of peg. And so that is kind of the history of the doc. And I know I'm not talking about the doc itself as much as about the history of the doc, but okay, I'm not saying you should copy this, but you should copy initiatives. Is it okay? Where's the actual link? Um, uh, where is that? Oh, is it in Tri-State Regional Rail? Um, okay, we have this, but okay. Etany. This is the report. I don't know if there's a link to it, but here's the report. Um, so yeah. So this you can just. I mean, these are words. You can copy them. And so anyway, I bring this up because um, and if you're watching this on YouTube, then the link is already in the description. So um, so the point is that there. So the point is that it's not some kind of a. It's not some kind of a now more than ever thing. Mostly because it's a trend, but it's a trend that's been happening for generations. Like, look, I mean, forget Corona for a moment. Before Corona, fewer people entered the Manhattan core at the peak hour than in 1960. Um, and so it's just updating to it. It's just updating to something that just hasn't been updated for I don't know 60-ish years. So it's based on essentially 1940s, 50s assumptions as implemented in the 60s and 70s, and already I think in the I mean I don't know if it was if there were already signs that it was in decline in the 70s, but there were certainly signs that other kinds of trips were increasing in scope. Things like trips between suburbs. There was already suburbanization of jobs evident in the 1950s and 60s. So there's work of sociology in the United States called Where, not Why. I think it's called When Work Disappears. Uh, so this is from 1996, but it describes the world of the 50s and 60s. The argument in the book is that the 1960s were an era of generally broadly shared prosperity in the United States. Economic growth was fast. Inequality was very slowly decreasing. So everyone was benefiting, and the poor slightly more than the rich. Poverty rates were decreasing. Racial inequality was decreasing, but specifically in American inner city neighborhoods, they were getting rapidly blacker due to Great Migration, tail end, bringing in black people, and white flight, meaning that white people were fleeing. These specific neighborhoods were losing their access to jobs rather rapidly, due to, for example, early deindustrialization, what is now called offshoring, and at the time was mostly the move of jobs from unionized high wage, then manufacturing belt, northern now Rust Belt cities to the then lower wage, to some extent still lower wage, very anti-union South. So a lot of manufacturing jobs were leaving. So all the good jobs that let working class people get enough income to pretend that they were middle class, they in these specific areas they were disappearing. And there was a lot of also suburbanization. There was also a lot of suburbanization of jobs, generally in the direction of where rich people were living. So in the New York area is not very good for directionality. In fact, I think that for all of how people talk about how New York is unique, actually in this specific place, I think New York is kind of the most archetypically American city, in that there is a very rich core. These are neighborhoods like the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, the South Brooklyn neighborhoods that are the neighborhoods that are collectively historically known as South Brooklyn, but are now called Brownstone Brooklyn. Things like Park, and now up to Park Slope. Increasingly, things like Williamsburg, Greenpoint, new condos on Long Island City, Astoria. And then around it, there's quite a lot of poverty. Harlem is still rather poor. The South Bronx, Eastern Brooklyn, things like that, and Newark, and then beyond that you got the kind of normie suburbs. So it's called a poverty donut. And this is a model that kind of contrasts with directionality or favored and unfavored quarters, where there's a favored quarter in which from the city continuously in that direction everything is rich. And for example, in Chicago it would be the north side. Uh, or in Washington it would be Georgetown and then the western suburbs. And then there's an ill-favored quarter. This is Baltimore and Washington. So in Washington, city center, rich people, more rich people, rich people, rich people, rich people, uh, very poor people. This is more middle class. This is so this is black suburbanization, which is um, on the spectrum from actual middle class to working class pretending it's middle class. Like it's not. I mean, like this is not a low income area at all, but it's noticeably lower income than here. Um, New York has this kind of directionality, but it's much weaker. So things like on Long Island, rich people, less rich people, uh, rich people, rich people, less rich people, rich people, I think it's less rich, and then rich. Um, so Jersey Shore, for example, is kind of stereotyped as working class, but it's entirely cultural. It's not an actually distressed area in any way. Um, So the point is that the suburbanization of jobs has been toward where rich people lived. So in Washington, just to show you the favored quarters, west, north, northwest, that's where the jobs are moving, not southeast. Uh, in New York, it's again somewhat different. Long Island has very little job sprawl. Essentially, Robert Moses did not believe in job sprawl. He believed in uh, proper middle class, i.e., white Americans living here and here, driving to their jobs, maybe possibly taking the subway, but mostly driving to their jobs here, some urban renewal here, and then going back to the suburbs. So this is where he had the most influence. Here there's suburbanization of jobs to White Plains, Greenwich, Stanford, so a lot of reverse commuting already. In fact, there are 450,000 people who live in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn who work outside the city. West of the park versus east of the river in DC. Yeah, yeah. DC does no. DC does have a high income black population. It's just not an entire swath of very high incomes the way you have it in Fairfield County. Not Fairfield. I mean, you have it in Fairfield County, but I meant Fairfax. This is Fairfield County. Fairfax is west of DC. Fairfax is. I don't think they have county maps here, so this is Fairfax, and this is Loudoun, and these, I don't know about now, but certainly in the 2000s, early 10s, these were the two highest median income counties in the United States, essentially just because of how income geography mapped well to county boundaries. It's not like the area on net was richer than an equivalent blob in New York or San Francisco or something. It just didn't match county boundaries in New York or San Francisco, and here it does. So um, so yeah, and a lot of this is about providing service, but it's something that some railroads get. So the LIR is garbage at it, but again, it's less important on Long Island. Long Island, where are the job centers? There's East Garden City, which doesn't have a rail line. I think not in the report, but elsewhere I've talked about restoring this. And there's Mineola, but I think it's 30,000 or maybe 20,000, maybe 30 or 40,000, 30 or 40,000 jobs each. It's not that much. I think the entire city of Stanford is 100,000, maybe. So Stanford again, Stanford, Greenwich, White Plains, Tarrytown / Sleepy Hollow are the biggest ones in Metro North territory. Overall, again, from here, so city, not including Staten Island, to all of Long Island, all of Connecticut, all of Jersey, all of the counties in New York that are suburbs of New York. I don't want to say this is upstate, but you know what I mean? It's 450,000. You have the through commute right now in New York. It's another 400,000, and that is mapped here. So you may have seen a different map. Uh, we have it in the we have it in the not in the statement, but in the brief summary. We it's the same data, but maps made by different people. Um, so we can use this map. You can use this map depending on your preference of schematic versus more geographic. But all of these combined are, I think, 380,000 if you add all of them. And the now these are not entirely commuter rail through commutes. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so the richest majority black county in the United States, yeah, is PG, and then it's I think it's DeKalb, east of Atlanta. Um, yeah, Long Island has a little bit of that, but nothing big. Yeah, there are some edgeless cities. So office parks in Northern would be edgeless. Edge would be a lot of jobs in one place, like Mineola or East Garden City. There isn't much of that on Long Island. Again, White Plains, Stanford. Uh, yep. Yeah, exactly. This is yeah. Okay, thanks, Larry. Like this is exactly what I was channeling. So there's the donut hypothesis, which is again even in New York, and this is old numbers, but they haven't changed massively. I mean, absolute numbers have, the relative ones will not have changed very much. I think the secular trend in New York is that the poverty donut expands outward. So both the inner and outer limits of the ghetto go outward. So the ghetto moves farther out. So gentrifying areas are ones that are on this boundary, and then these are declining areas at the other boundary. I think overall this will have become redder than this. Connecticut specifically has been in relative decline to the city. But again, rich people, poor people. Um, rich people. I'm not going to call this poor, but less rich people. North versus South Shore. And so, yeah, this is much more of a donut than, for example, Chicago. Chicago, you can see a little bit of that, but fundamentally, north side, south side, west side. The Bay Area is just not. I mean, you can kind of see the donut model in the East Bay, except that it's weird to call it a donut when to see the actual wealth you need to go to San Francisco, not Oakland. And yeah, Dallas Fort Worth is entirely a wedge model. It's entirely favored and ill-favored quarters. Again, all this will have changed. I think New York is it's stabler, um, but so this trend of suburbanization of jobs was evident in the 60s and 70s already. Corporate HQs especially like moving in the direction of rich people. So General Electric moved its headquarters to Fairfield County, um, from the city, and I think it went back to the city very recently. So there's a little bit of that kind of reshoring recently, but because I mean before Corona there wasn't that much office growth, so the system was that the highest end offices would be in city center, and then all the subsidiaries would be elsewhere, which would just reduce productivity. Uh, and now, of course, post Corona, a lot of things are still in part time work from home. At least it depends on the industry, I guess, because tech is very work from home, but other industries not so much. Um, so yeah. So the upshot is that on 2019 numbers, city X Staten Island to rest of region, also X Staten Island. So for these numbers are as if Staten Island is a black hole because we talk about Staten Island to New York tunneling. So that is really something fundamentally different from throttling. So this to this is 450. This to this to this. Also Bronx to Brooklyn, just because the subway is very slow, and some of the commuter rail we're proposing in further stages would actually make this much easier. So all of these combined are about 400. Again, I think 380. So yeah, and the CTA red line probably, but No, I mean in New York there are subways to the Upper East Side, and that also go to places that are not the Upper East Side. The 456, rather they go between the South Bronx and the Upper East Side. So that's probably a bigger variance. Oh, do you have any mapping of like literally any mapping of Santiago? Um, uh, because that is really interesting, and I don't really have this data outside the US and very narrow cases in Europe. And in Japan, actually, no, I actually have ward level data in Japan on this, but I don't know how it is in Latin America. I can make like I once I can make guesses in Turkey, but the guess would be messaging Elifon Signal and asking her. Okay. But actually, if you have, but do you have an income app? Because that would be really interesting. Um, and yeah, and so that would, yeah, if you have that, it would be really cool. Um, so, but anyway, so we talk about these markets again. These are combined about 400K people one way. So 800. If you, sorry, 400,000 people, 800,000 trips almost. And now early action Theronic is not going to get you these 400. Okay, it's going to get you what? Jersey to Connecticut. That's not that much. It's going to get you some of Jersey to Queens, insofar as it goes to Flushing, or if you have an easy change to Jamaica. It doesn't get you to Long Island very much. Uh, it's going to get you some Jersey to Bronx, but it starts out small. Everything we talk about starts out small, and one of the things we try to do is something that fails gracefully. If only one thing is implemented, that thing should count for something. So if it's frequency on one line, it should make a difference. Or if it's running on one line, it should make a difference. If it's so what we really start proposing is so let's not look at the mapping of Paris for a moment. Let's look at the mapping of phase what we call phase one, which is so this is an electrification map because there are different electrification standards in different parts. There are 5 different electrification systems that are used. Uh, trains can mostly do more than one of them. No train can do all of them, which is fun. And yeah, so what we're saying is start. So this is the current map, just LIR, Metro North, and Jersey Transit. This is something that's under construction at very high cost because Andrew Cuomo cared about it. And so the idea is you start by when that project opens, Penn Station Access, you just throw in it to New Brunswick. You run every 10 minutes, peak and off peak. Maybe off peak you can do some tails every 20, like this can be every 20, but like in the city you need to run every 10 minutes. These are city neighborhoods that are on Penn Station Access, and I'm going to show this line and ask the people not look at it outside the city because outside the city it's crayon. Like, this is a very annoying S curve. So when I'm drawing this is crayon for high speed rail. And there's going to be some fun optimization about how much you're allowed to demolish versus what speed you can get out of these curves. But again, in the city, I'm hearing to right of way, so this just shows you where the tracks go is the point. So Penn Station Access involves opening stations here, Co-op City, here Morris Park, here Parkchester, and here Hunts Point. So 4 stations. We didn't mention others that should be open. Like you can see a 5th station here, just for the ease of the bus connections onto the BX12, but you can also do them here if you really want. It'll just be a little slower. There's also no station proposed at Astoria, and we say that there should be one, and the reason is that the assumptions in the project in Penn Station Access is that it should be like American Commuter Rail, infrequent, charging a premium fare, mostly for the peak, not really trying to interface with the rest of the system, the buses and the subways. So yeah, the ridership projections were kind of weak. If the ridership projections are weak, you don't spend this money, and this is a lot of money. It's a constrained area, and the MTA can't build. Um, Under more reasonable assumptions, like a train every 10 minutes, charging the same fare as the subway, this would be a very attractive location. So yeah, put a station here. Put a station here. We call it Queens Junction, because this is where the trains on Penn Station axis would go, and then the LRR is this line, and could go like this, but can also go like this to East Side axis. So do a cross-platform transfer here to increase frequency to both, so that you can have a cross-platform transfer, and so the train can essentially serve both destinations because you hop off the train and either it's a time transfer or you wait, or it's not timed, but the trains run every 5 minutes, so it doesn't matter. And so with these assumptions, the trains would be much more attractive for city residents, and of course for commuters, off-peak trips, non-work trips. We go over all of these. Ooh, thanks. Black is rich. Oh, so the favored quarter is east, northeast, I guess. And then, it doesn't look like there's much of a donut effect or some kind of like an American donut effect or a European rich city center poor suburbs effect. Interesting. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, and so if it's every 10 minutes in the city, off peak, and again in the suburbs, you could get away with a little less. We show it on the table. We linked some literature that if you're a regular reader of my blog, you have seen a couple times about the importance of like exactly quantifying how important frequency is for ridership. And yeah, so you do that. You extend it into Jersey, so that would be, I haven't drawn this outside this section because for high speed rail this is the most annoying one. But if I wanted to, I could map this up to here, and again, it might be crayon outside like city areas, but it doesn't matter at this point for what we're talking about. So yeah, there'd be stations like Secaucus. We talk about one here for future phases for connections to this line, to the Marsden Essex, if they don't just go to Penn Station. Newark Airport, Elizabeth, things like that. Pretty inner suburbs that are close enough to Manhattan, especially if the trains are sped up through better timetabling, that the frequency is going to be really important. So yeah, it's going to be really important to have a station every 10 minutes. And right now, Elizabeth has, I think, a station every, I think it's 3 stations an hour, but with irregular gaps. And instead of, I guess, I can actually look at this because we did map this. Not map, we made a table. Yeah. So Elizabeth is, 3 trains an hour, but they arrive unevenly. Okay. And the longest gap every hour is about 30 minutes. Same thing at Fordham. And so the upshot is that with much higher frequency, it's going to get much more ridership all times of day. It's not going to be as peaky. The ridership right now, it's not just that the service is peaky, the ridership is kind of peaky. Running is the 3 stations an hour. No, it's 3 trains an hour, but they're not on a 20-minute takt. They come from, it's a combo of different services with irregular gaps every hour. Same thing at Fordham. Fordham is it's one line. It's the trains on the Harlem line are hourly, and trains on the New Haven line on the locals they stop at Fordham, and it's every half hour off peak. So it's 3 trains an hour, but it's a half hour takt ish thing, and then another train every hour on some kind of weird tact, so there's a half-hourly gap every hour. And so we indicated that on the table. In the table, on the I don't know what preposition to use. When we drew the table, we indicated that. So yeah, we talk about all these things. We do talk about how it's going to speed things up and make things more reliable, even for the existing user base. The existing user base often is afraid of change, but at this point, there's so much. There's so much displeasure on Long Island over what happened with East Side Access, where the trains' frequencies were cut in half. That people are, I think, ready for change. So I'm too pessimistic to say all of this will happen in the next 10, 15 years, but I think some of this will. So I said that a lot of dual mode. Oh, okay, good question. Okay, so let's start with questions at this point. So what are the economics of dual voltage trains? So, dual voltage trains already exist in the United States. They're called the M8s, and they're the equipment on the New Haven line. And their cost does not appear different from that of pure catenary or pure third rail. They're heavier because they have catenary, and it's lower. Sorry, not lower. It's actually high frequency catenary, and they can't go on lower frequency than 60 hertz because of how overweight they are. But building a future variant, let's call it M10, that does dip down, that's not hard. The FRA regulations at this point are much more reasonable. They don't need to build extremely heavy trains in the United States. They keep buying them because they're used to it, but they don't need to. And actually, we talk about this that they can do this with the regular equipment replacement cycle. So, because we are proposing to start with things that are entirely catenary, it is again this does not need dual voltage. I guess kind of. No, not even kind of. It's entirely 12 kV, 25 hertz, 60 hertz, but every 25 hertz train is also a 60 hertz train. And so the multi-levels that they're buying on New Jersey Transit can actually do this. So it's something that existing or already in purchase equipment could do. And then over time, it would be more things. So this is where they'd start needing third rail and 25 kV catenary. Now it's LRR third rail, which is different from Metro North third rail, but the M8s can already run on an LRR third rail. They can be changed in the shop. There's no need to do so because the LRR has its own trains and doesn't need running right now to anything that has 60 hertz catenary, because New Jersey Transit, this is 25 hertz and they can't do that. But in theory. So either they re-electrify the 60 hertz, which is one of these perennial Amtrak tree painting wish lists, or they just get M10s. But on the regular equipment cycle, mostly, it's just you keep replacing trains, or you add trains for adding service. You add this. The Port Washington line is short. The Port Washington branch is short, so it's not that much new equipment, unlike trains that go all the way to New Haven. This is, on today's timetables, more than 2 hours. This is not. No, this should not be 2 hours. There should be an hour and change, but this is a different conversation. Oh, yeah, it's tri-voltage because it can run on different voltages. Just the same. You're right, but voltage is not hard. The difficulty with catenary trains is reducing the frequency, because then you need a larger onboard transformer at the price of smaller transformers at the substation. So every train that can run on 60 hertz can run on higher frequency if it existed, which it doesn't. But every train that runs on, let's say, German frequency, 16 into thirds hertz can automatically also run on 50 hertz. It's the opposite direction that's hard. Yeah, but this is not going to be useful equipment. Yeah, so as I said, the priorities for electrification should be Port Jeff. Uh, this absolutely has to be electrified as part of Penn Station Access West because this is unelectrified. But also Croton Harmon to Poughkeepsie is one of those three busiest diesel lines, and I never remember which is the busiest: Port Jeff, Upper Hudson, or Raritan Valley. For this, they might actually want to think about turning that into catenary for intercities. But again, think about the stuff that Empire trains would be running through to on commuter rail is LIRR, which is already third rail, so it's just a matter of figuring out how to flip it from LIR to Metro North third rail in motion, or at the station. Um, or maybe do something where it's one kind of third on one side, the other kind on the other side, and then you switch. Yeah, M8 runs 25 kV, but the point is that the voltage is not the hard part, the frequency is. Um, so yeah, so the answer is it's a little bit annoying, but it's modular enough because of how different the various European standards are in electrification on DC, AC, voltage, frequency. That it's one of the things that the vendors are used to. So a lot of things that look very difficult are not, because the general rule is if there are big differences on this between different countries and different major cities in Europe, it's already modular. So things like the dimensions of the trains, things like what kind of electrification they use, that's a solved problem. Even the gauge. You can use the same modular product that is used for standard gauge trains in most of Europe. You can use it in Finland, which uses Russian gauge. You can use it in Spain, which uses Iberian gauge, which is the same as BART. Yeah, and if you do intelligent roll and stopping roll, then yeah, that's not the hard part. You need to plan in advance, which is foreign to American planners, where a lot of the planning is very ad hoc. One of the people that I've spoken to about this said that it would be nice if it could happen, but the mode I'm forgetting whether it was the MTA, Port Authority, or New Jersey Transit, or the entire New York region in general, is constant fighting fires. Essentially, it's officials who fires constantly erupt when they're in charge because these officials aren't very good. So, what's vision? It's not about one election cycle. It's not. So the election cycle thing is kind of a non-issue. It's a New York is a safe state. So is New Jersey. It's not. These are not party cronies. It's not like these are people who are party apparatchiks of the Democratic Party. In fact, it's something. In fact, it's so bad that the situation in New York that people who view themselves as party apparatchiks for the Democratic Party would be a step up from the current crop of people who are just who are engaging in a lot of politics, but it's entirely court politics. It's entirely court favors. It's something that I could do. I could write a LARP about if I didn't value my time, or rather, let's face it, I don't value my time. If I valued my time even less than I currently value my time. Um, yeah, the part where Mark Rutte is also a step up from the government of New York at all levels is disturbing. Or what's the guy name again? Peter Romzeit is the guy who's currently leading in the polls on a platform of I don't even know what NSC's platform is. I live in Germany. I don't want him. We have. I mean, okay, he is better than Friedrich Merz, but that's not saying much. I'm sorry. Yeah. So anyway, that's the answer to the question about voltage. Yeah, it's an issue, but if you plan in advance, it's a very minor issue. Oh, he's moving up to NATO. Honestly, that I don't think that's bad, right? He was good in Ukraine, right? He was not like. I mean, Olaf Scholz is someone who would not want kicked up to NATO, but um, I thought Rutte was okay about equipment. Um, it's like how in Ukraine, people loved Boris Johnson. Was about the only place that people loved Boris Johnson. Um, by the way, are there other questions about this? This is very much going to be a Q&A because we're doing a formal presentation in which there are actually going to be slides where currently Blair and I are arguing over whether to do the slides in Beamer, which is what I'm used to, or Google Slides, which is what she is used to. Like when she runs ETA meetings, she uses Google Slides. When I make my own presentations, I use Beamer like a nerd who pretends that they know how to code and that is unfetty. Ooh, okay. No, I'm not going to end the stream. This stream is going to take a long to be discussing slide software. Yeah, no, the talk is tomorrow. Do I look to you like someone who writes slides more than a day in advance? I've given talks when I made the slides the day of. I think one of the talks that I put up on my blog, I put up the slides while people before me at the conference were talking. And yes, please join us tomorrow if you are in or around New York City. If you are not, then please don't fly for us. This is not important enough to emit, a ton or a ton and a half of carbon dioxide one way, so twice for a round trip. Fluxcom is a thing. Please have a lot of Fluxcom. This is what Fluxcom is. How's it called in Swedish? Yeah, Fluxcom. I'm not overpronouncing all of the letters, so it's not actual Swedish, but okay. I mean, like I don't think Stoltenberg has been especially bad, right? I mean, like the main NATO job is to like coordinate everyone so that the United States will not spend too much time complaining about the Bundeswehrmacht, and the German doesn't complain too much about whatever Germany wants to complain about, right? It's not like you want a broadly consensual figure from a small country, I think. Okay, so in my assume Nordic, not normal, assume normal costs, it is this map, which means that strategically I will not have the map, or I don't think I have the map on my computer, which I bought, I think, a few days after I made this post. So I have a small amount of reverse branching. Yes. So let's talk about the reverse branching. So this is rather close to the map that we're proposing in not phase 3, which is just with Grand Central, not even with the Empire connection realignment. But we have so we do talk about this realignment, but not on the main map. And then we go over some Penn Station technical things. I guess we don't even do a full 2 pages on. No, Penn expansion is a lot less than 2 pages. It's not even a full page. I guess it's just how it starts in the second half of page 40 and then ends within a paragraph of page 41. So this is the long-term map. I don't know if we did the same stations here. We didn't look at the map here when we were talking about this. It's what, 42nd Upper West Side, 125th Washington Heights. 42nd Upper West Side, 125th Washington Heights, or maybe Hudson Heights. I don't know what this would be called, and then Inwood. Okay, so one extra stop, I guess. Oh, only one sunny side stop here, or low altitude stop here. We have 2. So again, small changes, but similar maps. I don't think the colors are the same. No, they're not. So, there's still reverse branching. It's not made clear here, but the service plans are very similar here and here. And the point is that, and we actually go over it, where what we say is that this cleaves New Jersey Transit into 3 pieces, of which one piece is the Erie lines that go to Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn. Another piece is the Mars and Essex lines, which go through this Kearny Junction stop station, which is, it's not actually a crossing, it's supposed to be cross-platform. Then Hoboken and Grand Central. This is this tunnel. This is this Carnegie Junction stop that is mentioned, that is mapped in our report. And then there is the Northeast Corridor and Route and Valley Line system, which does reverse branch, but it's supposed to be localized to the point that only some of the Metro North lines intersect with it. The idea is to eventually make all of these go express here, and all of these go local here, to fully separate these out. Which again is kind of annoying. It means it does make things less flexible, and it's not a good thing. But the alternate, I mean, I guess you don't need to do it. It just means that this line, the lines to Harlem and Staten Island would be, so this line is going to be intertwined with this, which you don't want if you can avoid it. But the idea is it's not eliminating reverse branching, because I don't actually think there is a single commuter rail system in the world with more than one city trunk and no reverse branching. Berlin has 3 and has some reverse branching. Paris has 5 and it doesn't have RER to RER reverse branching, but it has to Transilien reverse branching. Even A to Transilien reverse branching. Even the kind of most metro-like and least Transilien-like line has that. Tokyo has a bunch. But it does. But so you can't eliminate this on commuter rail in practice if you have more than one trunk, but you can reduce it, and you should. So what's the thought process about which LIR lines go to Penn and Grand Central? Ooh, good question. We go into it in the doc, but not in as much gory detail as in a comments section, because this document is not intended to be the comments section. I try to keep the writing styles different, and also even the referencing style. This is like legit references, not inline links or anything like that. So the thought process about the LIR is that you want to, again, remove reverse branching when you can. And this means that there should be some branches that only go to Grand Central and others that only go to Penn Station, rather than splits. The splits should be handled through changes at Jamaica, or at what I used to call Sunnyside Junction on blog, and what we call Queens Junction in the report. We call it this way because there's a separate proposed Sunnyside station, which is here. So it's not at the junction. The East Side Access Line branches before you hit there. It's at Queens Boulevard. It's much closer to peak Long Island City jobs, whereas this is more transfer station. It's not as well developed an area. There are a fair number of jobs within a kilometer, but it means mostly 600 meters to a kilometer to the west. So it's mostly this the jobs of the eastern end of this chunk. And of course, the can zoom in. So it's this. You see the Queens Boulevard is where the 7 is in this part. And so the thought process, so what I'm making a claim, so the claim I'm making right now is that an LIR line must go to, and this is the stuff that's on in the report, needs to go to Penn Station with through running, Penn Station without through running to New Jersey, which is eventually to the Empire connection, or to Grand Central, or to Brooklyn, and it should not be reverse split. It should be pretty consistent which lines go to which. So Brooklyn is easiest. It's the Atlantic branch. It's Far Rockaway and then Long Beach. And the reason for that is that these are the lines where the junctions are most easily set up for it. These are also the most urban lines. So these are lines where connections to more parts of the city, which is what is given by connections to Brooklyn, are the most valuable. So it's less of a must go to Midtown always part. So this means that there remain 3 parts to Long Island, and they need to be matched to Penn Station with running to Jersey, Penn Station without running to Jersey, and Grand Central. And so Penn Station with running to Jersey needs to be kind of viewed as a branch off of Penn Station access, and so the Port Washington branch is the best for it because it is the one that is least connected to the rest of the LIR. Doesn't even go to Jamaica. Um, so it can be more easily separated out from the rest. Also, it's a good early action line for a bunch of reasons. First, Flushing is growing. Second, the 7 is overcrowded, although so are the EF. Third, um, there are a bunch of stops here, which makes it really easy to redo the bus system if I guess the stops are not depicted. Maybe they will be depicted if we zoom in, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, um, so the point is that if these are all available urban stops, then you can have a much more robust bus system for northeastern Queens because instead of having all these buses from all over this region, which is the current situation, funnel into into Flushing, into Flushing for the subway transfer. Instead, they would go north-south, so they would not go through peak crowding, through peak traffic, which is the situation right now. Uh, and so it's something that is also good in early action. And then the rest of the system, the Jamaica system, let's call it, would be a combo of things that go to Grand Central and things to go to Penn Station and don't go to Jersey. Um, I like the more express lines for Grand Central and the less express lines for Penn Station for a bunch of reasons. And for example, I like the peakier parts of the system, the more outer parts of the system for non-throw or things that get through later because it's less important. Through is mostly an inner thing, so you want to make sure that the highest priority for throw is the innermost lines with the most urban traffic. The reason that we're even proposing Northeast Corridor ahead of Mars and Essex lines is just better infrastructure here, high platforms and so on. So you want to make sure that the priority for throwing goes to the urban lines. Penn Station X is very good for that. And this means that the express lines on the LRR, so to speak, so the lines that don't make the local stops in the city, these are the ones that should be going to Grand Central. Because throwing really is more important for inner than outer lines. The only reason you would really throw on the outer lines is because the outer lines also have inner service to some extent. Inner express service, but still inner service. And we actually do talk about the inner and outer ratio with a lot of arguments about whether we talk about electrifying everything or electrifying only inner parts, or throwing everything or just inner parts. And I actually had to talk about this a little bit, where in Jersey there are you don't really need to throw on past driver time. There's not a lot of ridership here, and it's strictly one way in the morning, out in the afternoon. It's not going to change very much. Or here, same thing. But these trains also have inner service here and here, and so it's important for that reason. So does that answer your question, Play Discord? Oh, and you guys have the same color on OBS, which is a little difficult to track here. It's different colors. And like how the court is in orange. I don't know if it's in. I don't think you picked the orange here. It's just random, right? You guys are in orange. Would I consider short turning the lines I mentioned at all? Yes, definitely. So, yeah, it's likely that. Okay, I can't say this. This schematic might be better for this. Yeah. So lines that have much more demand in the inner than outer end. Yeah. So for example, I expect the trains that are billed as Harlem Line. Yeah, all of them should go to White Plains, but they don't all have to go to Southeast, and very few have to go to Wasaga. It can entirely be something like, I don't know, every hour, even every 2 hours to Wasaga, to be honest. Or honestly, just make it a forced transfer because it's the weakest part of the system. It might not even be electrified, and it's third rail, which costs more usually. I don't actually. I say it costs more. I don't actually know if third rail costs more if the MTA electrifies with third rail and cannot build, and therefore the costs are very high. Yeah. So here or here, I imagine it's only going to be a train every half hour past our time, or a train every 20, 30 minutes past Summit to Gladstone. And even if nominally it's every 10 minutes, what it means is every 10 minutes, and either 2/3 or one half these trains, probably one half turn at Summit. Pocket track that is currently being built. Because the New Jersey Transit capital plan has a lot of garbage in it, also a lot of really cool, but also a lot of really cool things. And I can't wait for politicians to hear about it and make all the costs magically triple. Yeah, yeah. So the uses at the trains, yeah, are like half go to Penn Station, half to Grand Central, often from each branch, and that's stupid because they broke all the transfers. It's fine to do it if you know how to mix and match your transfers, but they don't. So what you really need is to bring back the transfers, the cross platforms at Jamaica, and with the uh, and with Penn Station Access and the Port Washington branch at this Queens Junction station. Yeah, because it depends on where people from the outer branches are really going, but for the most part, they're just going to city center. Like the outer branches are really much less urban. Like, I could joke about how Hudson County is a borough of New York City under occupation, or even Newark, Yonkers, maybe even Elizabeth, but Westfield is pure suburb. Or I can even say something about how parts of Long Island, like the middle and the South Shore, things that would have been annexed if there hadn't been for anti-school integration politics. But again, not every suburb is Yonkers, not every suburb is New Rochelle, not every suburb is even something like, let's call it a classical middle suburb like Westfield. I just bring up Westfield because it's the busiest stop on the Raritan Valley line. So things like Westfield, New Brunswick, Metuchen, like Woodbridge, Edison, Metuchen. Plus, the station is actually called Woodbridge. It's on the, uh, which is on the, what's it called? It's on the North Jersey coastline, the Amboy. So, like, these are, let's call them middle suburbs. And yeah, you can even do some throwing there, but when you go farther out, it's not really worth it. Except insofar as these trains also serve the middle suburbs and the inner suburbs, and that's when it becomes more interesting. Um, but otherwise, I mean, this is not meaningfully urbanized. This is So we can say that these are things that should be in New York and would be if New York had annexed like Berlin, or rather had annexed in the 20s when Berlin did, and could annex across state lines, which I guess it couldn't. But but this is like very Brandenburg. Um, Certainly past Raritan, but even um, but even things are a little bit before Raritan. You know, the Boundberg, Somerville, where I've actually been. I threw snowballs at a street sign here at Somerville while waiting for a pickup because we thought that this was the stop we were supposed to get off at, and we actually were supposed to get off at Boundbrook. It's not this one even. This one. This is Bridgewater. We were supposed to get off here for for an event in Somerset. And instead of getting off here, we got off here, so the ride took uh, longer. Um, so I've been here and I've been here. This is really good. It's like single family up until the right up until the station. Like this is the land use. So some parking and maybe one office building, and everything else is just houses. Um, yeah. Are there other questions? Yeah, yeah. To what? Do there are more questions or? Oh, I guess you have more questions and are just waiting to type them out because you're saying yeah to tell me that you're going to type them out. From Ooh, good question. Good question. So first of all, we talk about it a little bit in the case of SEPTA. We call it paired through running. So instead of this system bad, this system good, like actually make it clear what goes to what and make it consistent. So a paired system is against this, and we talk. So we give some examples of why and of how they did it in Philadelphia. We go over case studies in this section in 3A. It's taking some time to. So the main case studies are Paris and London, but we also talk about Philadelphia to some extent, which has a lot of failures. So the branching and the matching is designed based on uh, yard locations and based on in Philadelphia and based on ridership matching. So the busiest branch on the Pennsylvania side, which is the main line, was paired with the busiest on the Reading branch, which was the main line. I don't remember if Warminster or no Doylestown, I think it was R5 Doylestown. Um, and so in New York, we do this based on electrification compatibility. So the first priority for east of Hudson through running is the one line through Penn Station that is on catenary, which is this one. And the and beyond that, again, limiting the need for early multi-voltage trains going on the short and relatively isolated Port Washington branch for phase 2. And from there it kind of builds itself up. Um, the and so in the crayonier bits, we're going to call it phase 4. This there's a reason we interposed with the discussion of Penn Station. So potential further investment. So Brooklyn and Hoboken kind of point toward each other. Actually, this is probably the best. So this exists. And this exists. So these kind of point in each other's direction, so you can just do this. This is the existing train station. This is a disused right of way that because this train station used to exist. And so you go here, build a tunnel, do this. More jobs here than here. And eventually also do this. And this kind of points toward the east side access and Grand Central. And so you do this and this, just because they point toward each other. Why in phase 2, let's call it, or phase 3, we talk about how Mars and Essex should be in the new tunnel and the northeast in the old tunnel. There's a method to the madness. So the method is as follows: intercity trains have to use the old tunnels, which is regrettable because they are narrower and therefore limit the speed because of issues of free air. It's a small difference, but it's a difference. But you want to keep them out of. First of all, they have to throw run immediately, and second, when they throw run, they should be throwing through here, not through Grand Central, because then, yeah, it's nice to make 2 New York City stops, but then they would be forced to also make the Harlem stop, and that would slow through riders, Boston to Philadelphia, things like that. This is a little shorter, actually, the shorter path between Penn Station and Rochelle, but it's curvier. And so the intercities have to do this. So the trains that have to share tracks and be timetable with the intercities more should also be here. And this means that early on you want the northeast corridor in the old tunnel, and this means also its branches So it means the North Jersey Coast branch should be in the old tunnel. And that's how and this is how this through trunk has come into place. It's entirely about timetable. It's entirely about limiting the need to do complex timetabling of a highly reverse branch system. Um, so that's the operational perspective here. The difficult bit is not yard locations, because they're already expanding yards. So they are symmetrically going to expand yards at outer locations, things like Jersey Avenue. They're trying to expand the yard here, and this is stupid. We talk about how it's $2.4 billion that they don't need to spend if they do through running. Often the cost of doing the cost of I don't call it the cost of doing nothing, but the cost of business as usual, visionless investment is generally no lower than that of things that are built as grand visions. The vision is not the price; the vision is the coordination. And yeah, it also removes sources of cascading delays, because um, you can't plan a system that is this interlinked without skipping some steps. It's an NP complete problem, optimally timetabling a train, and if you optimally timetable a train with many different nodes and constraints, then you need to make leaps of logic, and the leaps of logic lead to either delays that you can't predict in advance or timetables that are literally impossible, where the conflict is baked into the timetable because they assume that one of the trains is going to be late anyway. And I wish I were kidding. This is literally what's being planned for Caltrain, or was planned for Caltrain at one point when they were designing the downtown extension, and when they were still trying to combine with high speed rail. Yeah. So whenever you have catenary issues between Newark and Penn, you have delays. So the answer to this is stop having catenary issues. I mean, if you have a problem, just fix the catenary. It doesn't cost a lot of money to rebuild catenary. I mean, maybe it does because Amtrak can't build any more than the MTA does. Okay, have people who can rebuild catenary rebuild the catenary. The correct amount of time to have catenary issues between New York City and Newark, given how busy that line is 0. Um, Generally, the most aggressive maintenance regime should be for the busiest trunk lines. So there will be things like the lines where you have the most powerful snow plows. You would expect that these should be in the snowiest places, but no. These are actually in places where there's some snow, but there's so much traffic that you need that the snowplow that you can't run a lot of snowplows. You have maybe one nighttime window, and then other shit has to happen. Yeah, and also it would be nice. Yes, and also they need to move it to have constant tension because I don't know why they keep variable tension in the United States. It's so insane. In Europe, they just do we just do we just do constant tension anything at any speed. That's the norm. In the United States, it's just a tradition to do variable tension, and also construction costs are higher than in Europe. Don't do it. Just do constant tension. Um, and not just in places where you are planning to run faster than 200 something kilometers an hour. And the something is low. I think it's 135 mph. Is it? The headspans are weird. Yeah, exactly. So you want to. So the 1 hour trek from Switzerland is not appropriate for New York, and the reason is that the population of Switzerland is about the same as the population of the 5 boroughs. Um, this means that the 1 hour. So the trains don't run hourly. In Switzerland, trains run hourly, sometimes half hourly. In Germany, the Deutschlandtakt has as its base trains every 2 hours, although on the main trunks it's every hour. Which makes it harder to read the string diagrams because it's 2 lines that are identical. You need to remember which of the numbers indicates an even hour or an odd hour. New York is much bigger. In New York, I don't think there's a single portion of the system, except maybe things that you can isolate, maybe Southeast USA, things that I'm not even sure why they're even bothering running trains, where you should be running less than every half hour, ever. Again, maybe I can see hourly to a sec, but or Greenport or the Hamptons, but that's I wouldn't even count that. Like like every even like reasonable outer cities like on the Jersey Shore or New Haven, Poughkeepsie, Trent should be every 20, 30 minutes. So this means that um, you don't do as many timed connections because you have a bunch of these lines. Where you would be having timed connections, the trains would be running every 5 minutes. Um, Borners. Is there a reason older systems have reverse branching disease? I don't think it's old. I mean, Tokyo has look at all the reverse branching in Tokyo. Just when you have a large enough city, it will necessarily have accumulated some craft in how it built its commuter rail system, and this means that sometimes you need several reverse branches. City has that. Like City has like two stations that were orphaned by a tunnel construction, so they also reverse branch there. Um, it's it's a normal thing. Again, avoid it when you can, but often it's unavoidable. Um, for example, there's less reverse branching in Paris. There's some, less than in London or New York. It's just a matter of where the lines point. Whereas there's the most reverse branching in Paris is where they just happened to start with the most of it, which was in the West, because that company uh, that company was instead of having one terminal in Paris that everything funneled to very easily, like Gare du Nord or Gare de l'Est, they had two. They had Saint-Lazare and Montparnasse for right bank and left bank service, and they also had Invalides for further reverse branch for some commuter stations. For some not commuters, from commuter trains that had better penetration. In London, I don't think it's brainless. On the northern line in London, it's because they don't have enough uh, interchange capacity at I think Camden Town. So they're planning to. I don't know what is actually the status of that, but the plan is to add circulation capacity to Camden Town, so passengers can make interchange and then separate the northern line into two. And yeah, the trunks. Oh, play Discord. Yeah, the trunks are. I'm assuming no more than 24 trains per hour. Although honestly, the ones that are very segregated from the rest of the system eventually could run more. I think. I think that this could run 30, maybe even this. Maybe this probably. I doubt about this and this. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you mean in South London on the commuter rail? I thought they're trying to do this, but it's very slow. But I mean, if you read London Reconnections regularly, you know more than I do on this. Like you know Pareto more than me. It's not like I know some. It's like you know on net more, but I know something you don't know. I mean, all of my information on this comes from London Recollections, about the Kent plan or something like that, or this. I'm forgetting. There's the Kent plan. I'm forgetting whether there's also the Surrey plan. Not Surrey. Surrey. Surrey is in Vancouver. I mean, it's a suburb of Vancouver. Surrey is a suburb of London. Are there more questions, by the way? So yeah, it's not just about maximizing throughput. It's also about more reliability, so that delays don't cascade, which lets you have more throughput, but it also means that um, the trains can be better guaranteed to be at a certain place at a certain time. Oh, okay, yeah, that is sad. I mean, I hope that the Hayes line at least gets tubed, but that's just the Hayes line. So with this new plan, do I have an outline for what bus metro integration looks like? Define looks like. So no, not 30. not this number, which is not a ridership number. I wish. This is genocide. This is the 385K in my search. Is the I guess you're not seeing it. It's the death toll. It's one of the ends of the range of the death tolls in the Tigray war, aka Tigray genocide. So let's look at buses. So we talk about this in the context of fair integration. We talk about this uh, in the context of buses could be feeding the trains. We don't talk about how they should feed the trains. Uh, we give an example in Jersey, which is the 113. There are of buses that run parallel when they should just be feeding uh, the train. And if the trains are not incredibly frequent, they should be with a time transfer. But we're not making any Queen's bus redesign assuming better LIR service. This is something I would like to do, but that's so far beyond scope. I mean, if someone wants to work for me 6 months, let's say full time, on making a Queen's bus redesign assuming better LIR service, let me know. We are gonna hire. I mean, you should have read the report ahead of time. The report was only released this morning. Um, I think I posted draft versions on Discord, but the report was only released this morning. So don't hit yourself for not reading a 20K word report. That you had maybe 4 hours to read ahead of time. Like, there's a limit of what I'm going to ask people to do for me. 6 months ago, you asked about depot placement. Borners. This might be a language and usage issue. When you say depot, do you mean train or bus? Because I'm used to American English in which rails are stabled in yards and buses are stabled in depots. So depot to me means a bus depot. When you say depot, do you mean a rail depot or a bus depot? Train depot. Okay. Uh, the answer is no. So the plan has strong opinions on what not to do, which is don't spend billions on near city center rail yards where real estate is expensive. Build the yards near outer ends or in places where you're going to get a lot of short turning. For example, we should not be on Paris on Google Earth. We should be on New York. And the so for example, Summit is a place where some trains. This is not Summit. This is Summit, where trains should be, and I think already are short turning. So there's a little bit of rail area they're building here. It's money, but it's not a lot of money. I think all of the work here combined, so switch work, pocket track, more switch work, a few tracks for short turns. I think all of that is about 90 or 100 million. And yeah, it should be less, but it's 100 million on a many billion-dollar plan. So things like this. So again, do small ones at ends of lines, or middles of lines if there's a significant short turning. Don't try to do big ones or big expansions near city centers. Like there were plans for a 12th Avenue yard in Arc before it became the Hudson Tunnel project when it was just Arc. Um, Alternative G, the one that would go to Grand Central, also had a 12th Avenue yard, which didn't really need to access. So that's the main thought in that case. Just work with what you have and don't do expansions in city centers. You don't need them. Do them outside city centers. Um, so again, Summit, yes. Hoboken, for example, no. Or Secaucus, no. Does the report propose any new short-running infrastructure that isn't already in the works? Good question, Larry. We talk about infrastructure for better reliability that's not in the works east of the Hudson. The west of the Hudson plan is essentially us just looking at the New Jersey transit plan and saying, yay, do some things. East of the Hudson, I don't think we're proposing any new pocket tracks. It's possible that some of them need to happen at Great Neck if there's a big increase in frequency, but I'm not sure because at rush hour there's a lot of frequency at rush hour, but maybe they need even more. I'm not sure, but it's so they would be using what is available here, maybe a little bit extra, just because this is a single track from Great Neck to Port Wash, and but otherwise, no. We're talking about again about junction replacements, about not replacement, separation. So Queens Junction here between the Hempstead branch and the main line, and we talk about the thing that in the crayon shaves the corner a little bit, but that would be part of rebuilding this junction, which is currently flat. It's called shell interlocking. It's a very tight speed limit. This curve is not especially tight. This is an S curve, and it's annoying, but so the answer to this question is, for the most part, no. The stuff we propose, it's not already in the works. It's mostly because just Queens and Shell. Queens interlocking and Shell interlocking. And again, it's mostly just because New Jersey Transit plans are more solid than MTA plans on this, because New Jersey Transit expects to actually build them, and the MTA expects to make excuses for why it needs more money. But yeah, we didn't go. Yeah, at one point the list of these projects was exhaustive of everything that needed to happen, and then it was just not very readable. So we decided to write it for, I want to say the average human, but let's say the average human who is into trains at this. If you're reading this deep into the doc, probably are autistic, but are not the type of autistic person who memorizes the mile point of every curve, because we literally because literally the shell interlocking is technically not called shell, it's called CP216 because it's, I think, mile point 16 from Grand Central. So this used to be a list with more shorter items, and we just consolidated or killed some of the items where it doesn't matter. We were talking about, the thing I just told you about 100 million that they're doing in Summit. I don't think that's important enough to merit this. We used to have an exhaustive list and then we burned it. Yeah. So in Europe and North America, I mean, honestly, if you have a legacy rail yard, you can keep it, unless you need the land for redevelopment. Unfortunately, in the United States, the idea is to deck over rather than to just move the yard, and then decking over is really expensive to build, but they don't think about that ever. Also, I mean, I will say in China, they barely have commuter rail. In China, it's mostly regional, suburban metro. So it's just subway lines that are longer and go and have longer stop spacing. Sometimes if they're not even underground in the suburbs or above ground. such as they stay underground to the suburbs. And I bring this up um, because this means that, for example, they just don't need to deal with the reverse branching. Yeah, I'm talking about 100 million, and yeah, um, in Summit maybe something similar. Um, at another spot, like it's not like that big a deal for something that I think is what 3 bill. I think it's 3 bill plus electrification plus high platform. So I think everything combined is maybe 5 or 6. So essentially, what we're saying is HTP, which is already funded, plus 5 to 6, some of which is all but funded, like the mid level, like the 800 for Portal is practically guaranteed to happen. And yeah, you do that, you get the system. Like it's not actually that expensive when you coordinate the plans. On the subject, have you written anything on how do you decide where to shorten? Good question. I have not. Um, so where would you shorten? So first of all, if there's a drop off in ridership, that is a good spot. So for example, so I give the examples of Raritan and Summit. Uh, I gave them on stream. I think we mentioned both of them in the report. Um, just look at the land use. So part of the city under occupation, part of the city under occupation, suburb, more suburb, lower density, and then past Raritan. You can see the transition from gray to green. If it were restoring, if this line did not exist, there should not be any reason to extend service past Raritan. If it's there, keep it. But by itself, there would not be a reason to keep the service all the way to hybrid rather than only to Raritan. Let me put it that way. So if you have a big difference in land use that you can see on the map, yeah. Or this is also visible in ridership. Same thing with Summit. Summit is a very busy station. And then the Gladstone branching, just see it's kind of meh. Like it's controversial to even throw running. I mean, it's so weak that it could just go to Hoboken or something. It's just gonna interface poorly with the trains on the main line that do through run. Is why we're portraying it as running through. It's one of those lines that, again, would not ever be upgraded by itself, but it's already electrified, and the through-running, I mean, because it would extend trains that should be through-running. It should be through-running, essentially, is the issue. And but even then, again, so that's a good spot for some short turns. So again, it's based on ridership, land use, available infrastructure. I mean, if there's a place that already has the pocket track, do it there. Or if it's a place where you're going for 4 tracks to 2 tracks, from 3 tracks to 2 tracks, yeah, might as well. If it's good for that. If there's a park and ride, actually, it's a good space in an area that's very auto-oriented, like Ronkonkoma. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, yeah, I should probably do some development on Ronkonkoma, but fundamentally, because this is the parking lot for this entire catchment area, it's okay to have frequent trains go to Ronkonkoma and then only a train every hour, even less than every hour, going past Ronkonkoma. Yeah. I mean, you want to make sure that you can short term and the thing is, if there are weird short turns on the LIRR because of how some trains only go east of Jamaica, but or used to, and that creates problems. But it depends. But it really is. It's about ridership. If you have a line that's very heavily single track, or an outer tail that's very heavily single track, you want to figure out how to short turn before you hit that. So that would be great knock. I mean, if this were double track, there would not be any reason to not run the trains to the end. Like, yeah, the ridership here is weaker than here, but it's 3 stops. Who cares? But single track, double track, so you want to make sure that trains can park here. Same thing. Same thing with the West Hampstead branch, which on top of everything is also kind of weak. Like, I don't think it has to be weak. This is not very low density, but it is kind of circuitous, going like this, and not as directly as Hampstead. It's also not a town center. So keep this probably. Again, depends on exactly what's easier to do. Short turn, do some double tracking, or find a way to turn into Valley Stream. Um, and I hope that answers the question. Like, I haven't. It's not something that is easy to theorize. I don't think, just because it depends on a bunch of different factors uh, and on pre-existing infrastructure. Um, None of this is for stuff you would build de novo. If you build de novo, you just don't probably short run, because you just make sure you're going to have a lot of. Because if you're building de novo, then probably you're doing a lot of TOD, so you're going to do a lot of TOD entire line. So you're going to have a lot of uh, ridership all the way to that. Yeah, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Are there more questions? Um, I kind of want to end for, if there are no questions, maybe 4:10, so 2-hour recording if there are. Yeah. So anyway, this is so anyway. Thanks for this question. I actually like seeing. Oh, to borrow a metaphor from foreign exchange, is there an impossible triangle between frequency, reliability, and service complexity? Um. Well, it depends, because usually when I think of expresses, I think of 4-track lines, like on the New York City subway. And I mean, obviously, New York City subway separately also is also heavily reverse branched, but that's not relevant to the local express situation. Um, I guess in Tokyo, because you have all these 2-track lines that run express service, but only when they can, that disrupts things. Um, it, um, it is kind of difficult, but still when you think of express services, I think even in Tokyo, I think about the distinction between Chua Rapid and Chua Sobu. So I think about lines that have dedicated tracks. Uh, okay, Hikoki, go for it. Go for the last question. We have 14 seconds of based on this, or 13, 14 seconds of lag. So it's not too on us. I guess you're still typing, so because these are long questions. Have I written anything definitive on making a network that is easy to optimize? Oh, no, I have not. Huh. Good question. I should think about it, but the answer is no, I haven't thought about how to. I guess we'd be reducing nodes, but then it means you're reducing. It means you're reducing timed connections, and timed connections are good. Is the trade-off? Which, for example, the Berlin U-Bahn has timed connections. So many spots that are entirely non-obvious. Um, Even at T intersections, let alone cross-platform ones. So it's clearly possible. It's just, yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Um, Thank you for essentially previewing our thing tomorrow. Reminder, we have a thing tomorrow. If you go to a bunch of places, like I'm going to tell you to do it via Mastodon, but you can go for whenever. It's also linked on my blog. And you should RSVP because of NYU access control. So I hope to see you in 21 hours if you're in the city. Thank you. See you. Ciao, ciao.